In this three-part DFS series, I'm going to show you how to play daily fantasy soccer on DraftKings and FanDuel like a pro. It's part one. We're starting with the basics right now. What's up, guys? Joe Holka here. Welcome to another daily fantasy sports and betting video. If this is your first time here and you want to become a profitable DraftKings player and get better at betting, start now by subscribing to the channel, but make sure you click that notification bell so you don't miss anything along the way. If you're already a Holkamaniac, you know what to do. Smash that like button and we'll get rolling. All right, let's get started and talk a little bit about how we score points in soccer DFS.
Yeah, so DraftKings Soccer is a bit more solid now than what it used to be. At one point, they had a point per cross. So guys that would send in 10 to 12 crosses per game would be that much more valuable because they had an extra 0.25 points for everything. Now it's a lot more goal chasey, but what you end up finding is the goalies really dictate the slates heavily. We'll talk a bit more about goaltending later, but the goalies are so high variance, but they really dictate the slate because it's very hard to make up what the goaltender does, especially in cash, because a lot of the time in cash, there end up being about 4 or 5 plays that are no-brainer plays. So you end up in like a 3v3 or 4v4 against a lot of regulars, and then it ends up a situation of if your goalie puts up 25 and the other person's goalie puts up 2, it's really hard to make up 23 points in soccer when you only have 2 to 3 players in order to do that with. So scoring is very heavily dependent on crosses. That's one of the more projectable things to do. A cross is basically, well, it depends what the opt-to-interns are for the day. It's something the soccer community talks about a lot, but the opt-to-interns with tackles won, fouls drawn, interceptions, crosses, you're basically up to the subjective nature of what they dictate that day is a tackle won. So you may see a tackle won, but it might not count because that's just what the opt-to-intern decides for the day. But so you find things that are projectable, and crosses and shots and fouls drawn and tackles won, those are your main categories, and those are some of the more projectable things. So you can sit there and find guys that send in a lot of crosses per game, and those are more of guys you're looking for, because if you're sending in crosses, you have reasonable chance at getting assists as well. So it becomes a situation where you could get multiple score points.
Man, I have so many questions. I feel like that was my main worry with a sport like this. We talked about this when we had the MMA stream as well. Like, it seems like some of this stuff would be subjective in some ways. So I would assume that, like, as a DFS player, you're looking for consistency that you probably just don't get. By the way, guys, if you've ever found value in any of my videos or live streams, one of the best ways to support what I'm doing here for free is to throw me the follow over on Twitter. And if you're new to the community, I'm also doing a ton of content that's exclusive only to Instagram and IGTV. So if you can take a few seconds and give me the follow over there, I'd really appreciate it. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into goalie at some point in one of the next videos, but I definitely wanted to talk a little bit about if there was any similarities between soccer goalie and NHL goalie, since I know a lot of you guys are grinding NHL. Is goaltender similar to hockey in any way? Is it a little bit overweighted for the win? Like, talk about that a little bit as well.
So yes and no. So goaltender, what happens is the way that I would equate to hockey would be assume your goalie in hockey can't be pulled for giving up too many goals.
Okay.
Start with that, and then what you do is assume that the very good team's goaltender is going to see 10 to 15 shots, and assume the other team's goaltender is going to see 35 to 40 shots.
Wow.
So it's something like that. Basically, the massive favorite goaltender is not going to see very many shots, so his save total is capped because of that. However, he is more likely to get a win and a clean sheet. But basically what you see happen is if a massive favorite goaltender gives up a goal, it's very difficult for them to make value because they just don't see enough saves. Whereas if a bad team's goaltender sees 12 shots and he gives up 4 points, that's going to be almost every big-time favorite where the goaltender gives up a goal every time. And it puts you in a situation where you're very close to even if that goaltender doesn't give up a goal and gets a win. So you can see a situation where your goalie loses 4-0 and you pay half the price, and he ends up the same price, same exact score as the goaltender on the other side of the game. Gotcha. Now, that said, if the big-time favorite scores very clinically and they only score, let's say, 4 goals on 6 shots, well, then that goaltender is going to get a -4. And then if the goaltender that is on the good team gets a win and a clean sheet, maybe sees 1 to 2 shots, you're looking at a 12 to 14 point game. So it's just a very high variance spot that isn't necessarily projectable because it's basically a situation of if you're playing a good team's goaltender, does he concede or not? If he concedes, you probably do not want him. If he doesn't, he's okay. But he really is sort of capped on the top side.
What I gather with my conversation with Sean is that set pieces are extremely important, so we need to talk a little bit about what positions and who's going to be taking those type of events.
Yeah, a lot of the time the high price guys that you're going to want are midfielders that are on the wing that send in a lot of crosses, take a few shots, and that take set pieces. Set pieces become very important. If a guy takes penalties, that gives him an increase in value. If a guy takes all the set pieces, all the corner kicks, that increases the value. Depends on the team, but you could be looking at maybe 5 to 7 points of value through all of those possible set pieces that a guy might add, where if he doesn't have those, he loses out on those sets. So knowing who the set piece takers are and given lineups every day is a very important thing because it can drastically affect a guy's value. If a guy goes from taking no set piece share to taking both corners and all set pieces, you might increase his expected points by like 6 points, which is a drastic increase. And then you're looking at obviously the strikers score goals, and the way that DraftKings is set up, center backs don't generally produce a lot from open play, and there's a lot of players that don't produce a lot from open play. So those guys are more dependent on score points. So a center back might score 2 or 3 goals in the whole entire season. So if you're playing him, you're sort of you're hoping for that goal, or you're just sort of punting salary. But generally on DraftKings, the way that's set up, you want guys that are going to score the goals, and then you want wingers or guys that are playing out wide that are going to send in crosses. Most of the guys through the middle don't send in crosses, so therefore their options are limited at scoring points. That is different compared to what their showdown setup is like. So that is a bit more of a situation where you have more people in play in showdown than you do in the main slate.
Before we get back at it, if you like my work and you want to support my work, the number one way you can do so for free is by checking out any of the Amazon links in the description below. A lot of people have just been bookmarking one of those so they remember to use that link in their day-to-day shopping, because remember, what you buy doesn't matter. It just helps support the channel at that point. So I really appreciate that, guys, and all the rest of everyone else in the Amazon crew. So in order to be profitable in almost any DFS sport, you need to become a master of roster construction. So I want to talk to Sean about where we're going to be spending the majority of our salary in DFS soccer.
Generally, defenders don't sub. Usually the subs are attacking players, maybe a midfielder that's in the middle that's ran a lot all game, or guys out wide that are expected to produce speed up and down the wings that might run out. So those guys will be a bit more those guys are who you're more expecting to sub. In terms of salary, you're generally spending it on either high expected goal scorers or high expected set piece type guys that are in really good spots. James Madison's the best example of that. He's a guy that takes all the set pieces for Leicester, sends in a few crosses, shoots quite a bit. So he's a guy that's going to score a lot of points without getting a score point. If it's a big game where, let's say, Man City is a 3-goal favorite, you're going to be looking more towards guys like Aguero. That's where you're going to spend your money.
In something like NFL, typically we're targeting certain teams that maybe play at a fast pace, maybe score a lot of points. In soccer, it's actually pretty similar. There's some situations where it's definitely a lot more important to target certain teams versus others.
So some teams are just really bad at producing points. You see that with the NFL. Like if it's a slow team that doesn't really do much, or a run-heavy offense, maybe you won't want the receivers in that offense because it just isn't going to produce value. Each team is different. Some teams have more spread out production. Some teams have more concentrated production. So if it's a team like Leicester, like we've talked about, they have one guy that is their main cog that does a lot. I think he probably has the highest per 90 of someone that has a reasonable amount of minutes of anyone in the entire league without score points. So he's the guy that you look at. If they're in a good matchup, you can expect him to put up 10 to 15 points almost every single time, which is a great floor. It's a great ceiling. You can expect him to get close to 30 if he scores a goal. So he's a guy that you look at taking. So set pieces are massive. Every team is different. A team like Watford, Jose Holobos, he doesn't create tons from open play. So his whole value comes from set pieces and if their team is trailing against a team that they can actually hold some possession with and get stats on. So against Manchester City, he might not be able to do something, but if they play Burnley and they're trailing 1-0, it's a really good spot for him. But for example, his per 90 is around 4.5 or 5 if you remove set pieces. If you include set pieces, he's around 10. So he basically doubles his input, or he doubles his output if he is on set pieces. So it's a situation where if he is on the set pieces, he might be in play. But the way DraftKings algorithm works is it prices him like he's on set pieces no matter what.
Gotcha.
So if there's a situation where he hasn't been taking set pieces lately, or maybe he only has a share of them, it could decrease his value to a point where you can't really play him due to his lack of ability from open play and the fact that you're moving a decent portion of the set pieces.
If you want to learn more about how to become a profitable daily fantasy sports player and how to get better at betting, start now by hitting the subscribe icon in the bottom right-hand corner so you don't miss anything. Have a ton of DFS courses on demand for a lot of other sports as well. I'm sure you've seen most of them by now, but if you missed one, check out the one in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.